Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy Horror with me, Dr. Plague. Whew, it's been quite a week. I assume for you guys as well. I don't know, there's just something about the end of the week that... It's weird, right? It's a time of endings and new beginnings. A time of rest or of a different kind of work, if you work on the weekends. Always seems like the weekend work is busier because so many other people don't have to go to work. So, whether you're relaxing or working or just doing whatever, I do hope that you're enjoying yourself, and I do hope that you make some time for yourself. I also hope that you don't have any strange encounters while you're at work, which leads us into today's topic of discussion. Today's subject is strange creatures, and I think we've got some pretty good stories to talk about them. Our first story is one by Tristan Mason, who you may have heard some other stories on the channel by, and it's about a strange creature that lives in the woods. So, let's learn a little bit more about the Glaucus.
When my grandfather passed away during an early winter, my family scrambled to rid the house of his belongings before the first major storm. The asphalt shingle roof of his one-story home was collapsing inward after years of neglect, and most of the windows were boarded up with cheap plywood. Instead of paying for the repairs, my parents decided to leave the fate of the quaint little abode up to Mother Nature. It was the first time we had visited since they relocated my grandfather to a nursing home, but the place somehow looked the same as it had when he lived there. We found the house stocked with canned food, furniture, machine parts, and old magazines that he had accumulated over the years, along with manila folders full of recipes and tax returns. After a week of boxing and disposing, only the floorboards remained. "I don't know why you're filming this," my girlfriend Sasha said, as we entered what was the living room, carrying 2 cardboard boxes. "I mean, there's nothing left, not even that stray tabby that he used to feed." "Groucho?" I replied with a silent laugh. I held my phone horizontal to the plaster wall and zoomed in on the floral wallpaper. I doubt he's alive anymore, and I don't know, it's kind of nice to imagine the way things looked when my grandparents first moved in. "I guess so, but are you really going to put it on your channel?" "Maybe. It is abandoned, and we haven't uploaded anything in a while." "Yeah, Sasha exhaled and bit her lower lip, placing the boxes by the doorway to the kitchen area. "He bought this place with the money he received from his GI Bill, right?" "Sure did. Hey, you think we can do a segment on the Nike missile base? It's only about a mile away from here. The military built it back in the 50s, and..." "Jordan," she said, placing a firm hand on my wrist, "you know I hate to burst your bubble, but I don't really care. Not today, I'm sorry. I have class early tomorrow, and your parents just want us to pick up the stuff that's lying around. Grad school is taking over your life lately. Do you even want to make videos anymore?" She shrugged and sauntered into the adjacent room. Apart from the vinyl floor tiles and the storage closet, the kitchen looked unrecognizable. Not even an imprint of a stove, furniture, or cupboard remained. As Sasha opened the closest door, she signaled me towards a crumpled newspaper clipping that lay in the middle of the shelf next to a dusty can of Spam. Sasha carefully unraveled the paper, revealing 3 black and white images of hunters with captions scrawled across the bottom. In one of the images, a group of men wearing wool pants and red checkered jackets posed against a forest backdrop. The image underneath depicted a man aiming his rifle at a cat-like creature that stood on a dirt mound with a pointed triangular set of ears and an arched back. "Don Wakefield takes aim at the dreadful Glaucus? I didn't know your grandfather was a hunter. Look at that thing. It's so hideous that it's sort of adorable. I don't know about those eyes, though. I've never heard of what is it? I think it's pronounced Glaucus. At least, that's how I read the name on an urban legend website once. I had no idea that it was actually a thing, though." Sasha adjusted her braided brown hair and flipped the paper over. The words "local hunter search for a livestock-killing beast" preceded the brief blurb about my grandfather and fellow hunters chasing after a creature they called the Glaucus. The author dismissed the idea as hogwash and suggested that the so-called dreaded Glaucus was a fisher cat, marten, or another animal of some stature. The locals apparently dismissed the men, too, but were concerned about their livestock and pets being attacked. Well, at least the story is somewhat legit, unlike that insane asylum you dragged me to. Are you actually disappointed by this? Maybe a little, I said, scratching my elbow. I always saw him as a cranky old man who thought the government was going to take his guns. Now he's a cranky old man who didn't know the difference between a monster and a common fisher cat. Then again, doesn't really look like one. I placed the article and my phone in the pocket of my bomber jacket and continued to search the remaining rooms. I found it odd that my grandfather believed in this creature, considering his attitude towards other paranormal entities. When my cousin and I told ghost stories around the campfire, he grumbled at us to stop being twits and stumped out the fire with his work boots. He also thought Halloween was a pointless holiday and turned the lights out when the trick-or-treaters roamed the neighborhood. Unlike many men and women of his generation, he wasn't religious either. He preferred the idea of rotting in the ground to spending eternity with his wife. We explored the other rooms of the house, but discovered nothing more than a few loose envelopes, a stale bag of M&Ms, and an empty toolkit in the garage. By the time we made our way to the backyard patio, the surrounding neighbors had dimmed their lights to a dull glow. Snow seemed to engulf the forest beyond us and obscure the path my cousin and I took to our tree fort. Sasha put her hand on my shoulder as I inhaled deeply and stared into the smoke cloud that filled the air. As Sasha turned in the direction of the house, I was unable to move. Even though we had thoroughly rummaged through the interior, there was still so much more that I wanted to find. My grandfather lived his life in predictable, clockwork fashion. His hunt for the Glaucus was far removed from the man I knew and the stories that he told. I know this isn't easy for you. It's not just that. The whole Glaucus story doesn't make any sense. It's not him at all. My mom said he never believed in anything supernatural. Even after he lost a son, he said he didn't want to hear anything about him being in a better place, and he's just dead. I don't think it necessarily has to make sense. I know, but this whole Glaucus thing, it really doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to make sense right now. When my uncle died, we learned he had a whole family we never knew about, paid money to keep them quiet about it. My grandpa wasn't like that, though, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a gray-striped cat limping underneath a towering evergreen. As it moved through the snow, its left hind leg trembled violently. Hey, I think that's Groucho. Did Groucho have one yellow eye and one blue one? I nodded and bent down to tighten my shoelace. Sasha whispered the word "don't" with a slight raspiness. Groucho's eyes shined in the light of the night, but the lingering shadows prevented me from seeing if he had any noticeable cuts or scars. The temperature was dropping rapidly. Left alone, Groucho would likely freeze or succumb to his injuries. He can't survive out here. If we leave him like this, he's easy prey. We need to take him to an animal hospital. I hadn't a clue where the nearest animal hospital was, but I remembered how to approach and hold him by crouching down low and gently grabbing the underside of his belly. The closer I walked, though, the more his eyes widened and his tail stiffened. When I came within a few feet of the cat, he began to scamper, propelling himself forward with his 3 abled legs. It was still too dark to see his injuries. Knee-deep in the snow, I extended my arm towards the cat. Just as my fingertips grazed his fur, Groucho fixed his claws and began to whimper. I stroked his fur slowly and moved my fingers towards the markings on his hind leg. There were several of them, each about a 1/4 inch deep. Something mauled him, I called out. Can you help me calm him down? He's shaking. Sasha shook as well upon approaching Groucho, her face turning white like the snow beneath him. She stroked his chin as I attempted to blot the wound with the sleeve of my jacket. This only caused the cat to whimper in a higher pitch, taking quick breaths. As I continued to blot, Sasha carefully lifted him from the ground. He squirmed for a few moments before settling into her arms. She carried him around the house and into the driveway, which was illuminated by the headlights of my Chevy. I could see the markings more clearly now, and the thick gray clumps of fur that scattered about the area. There's an animal hospital on Grove Street. It's like 5 minutes away, Sasha said, trying her best to hold the cat against her chest. He squirmed and howled despite her soft strokes around his chin. Can you take him? He's really squirmy, and you probably know how to hold him better than I do. I grabbed, but before I could grab the underside of his belly, Groucho fell loose from her hands and scampered through the snow. He had learned to run with the limp, his 3 good legs carrying him back towards the evergreens. The moment I started chasing him, the cat picked up speed and darted between 2 trees, letting out another howl, which was longer and more painful. Sasha looked at me and motioned for me to run after him. I ran full sprint into the opening of the forest, but found nothing but his paw prints embedded in the snow. I wanted to follow the paw prints, but without a flashlight or suitable battery life on my phone, there was no use. Maybe we could call animal control or something, she said, when she finally caught up to me. I shook my head. I was panting pretty heavily. I don't think they'll do anything. I called animal control to get him before. They said they would come out and take a look, but they never did. He's injured, though. It's not safe out here. Trust me, Sasha. I know, but I also know they won't come. If we want to find Groucho, we have to do it ourselves. Sasha gave me a long, vacant stare, wrapping her arms tightly around her chest. She started to open her mouth to say something and then paused. Sasha was too tired and cold to argue with me about making brash decisions. We had had this discussion many times, whether it was about breaking into an abandoned building or sneaking into a supposedly haunted location. Sasha always argued first, but reluctantly followed. You don't have to come along, you know. Don't even start with that. Let's go. Under her breath, she muttered something along the lines of, I'm not doing this for you. Using the flashlight on our dying phones, we followed the narrow path into the forest, lined with jagged stones and twigs that jabbed at our shoes as we trudged through. Many moons ago, my grandfather told me that the path led to the town square. Over time, it had become overgrown and naturally sealed off from civilians. On occasions, my cousin and I attempted to find out where the path led to. We found only a few farmhouses, but felt oddly disoriented the whole time, not knowing which way to come from to go back. We spent hours in those woods, but not by our choosing. The further we walked, the fainter Groucho's footprints became, before they disappeared entirely. The last set of footprints gave no indication of direction. They simply vanished. Through the tree line, we could see acres of farmland. We figured Groucho might be darting towards the farmland for refuge. Many of my grandfather's neighbors, including the dairy farmers that lived behind him, knew of Groucho since he had stumbled onto their property for sustenance and shelter more than once. They would feed him and let him rest on their front porch or behind their house until he went along his way. Groucho must have been in his teens, as I remembered encountering him sometime in early high school. As we pushed through the evergreens onto the property, Sasha froze and pointed to a figure a few yards in front of us. Oh my God, that's... In the middle of the pasture lay a mangled body, that of a brown cow. The cow was torn at its abdomen, blood filtering into its coat, trickling up to its neck and down its tail. The hole was about the size of a medium watermelon. Sasha screamed and shivered. I bent forward and vomited into the snow, shivering too. The cow, Jordan. Oh my God, she said, still pointing, ugly tears drenching her face. Sasha started to walk towards the cow, and I grabbed her by the waist. Don't approach it. We don't know if what attacked it is still around. Don't get any closer." "Then what do we do, Jordan?" We stood there for the next few minutes, not knowing what to do. We just held each other, like we hadn't in a long time. Sasha sobbed. I pulled her in close and struggled to think of something to say. By now, I hoped Groucho had retreated far enough away from whatever was out here. In the distance, a single-story white farmhouse had its front porch lights on. "We should probably let them know," I said. "I really don't know what else to do." "Yeah," she said softly, still clinging tightly to me. We made our way up a tall hill to the farmhouse. We couldn't help but look back at the mangled cow a few times, just to confirm what we had seen. I wondered why the cow was outdoors in the dead of winter. I wondered what got it. The description of the livestock-killing beast from the newspaper clipping crossed my mind, but it seemed too coincidental. I wanted badly to say out loud what I was thinking, but looking at Sasha's pale complexion, I knew it was neither the time or the place. Once my roommate and best friend Zach told me that I let what I read about influence my thinking too much. Sasha made the same observation. They weren't wrong. I once thought my apartment was haunted after watching several hours of ghost hunting shows. I wanted to believe in the supernatural more than I ever had evidence for. Still, I couldn't help but think about that cat-like creature with the pointed ears tearing at the cow's flesh and Groucho's leg. If my grandfather, a lifelong skeptic, went after the creature with an entire squad, there had to be something to it. We reached the farmhouse, and Sasha was still pale and shaking. I was too. On the front steps of the house, I hesitated to press the doorbell, scanning the area for any sight of Groucho or another cow. When I finally pressed it, a few moments passed before a meaty arm opened the door. The man who opened it towered over the two of us, wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt that barely hid his massive figure. The man stood there, arms folded, and blinked a few times. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir." I knew by the tone of my own voice that I would fumble over my words. "We were looking for our cat, and well, it's not our cat, but a cat we used to know, and we saw one of your cows through the woods, and..." "The hell are you doing on my property?" he said coldly, still blinking as if trying to wake up. "Wait, aren't you Don's grandson?" I stared blankly at him and nodded. Sasha clung tightly to my arm. "How did you know?" "My name's Nick. I used to bring eggs and meat to him. He had pictures of you and your mom and used to talk about you all the time. But what the hell are you doing here, and what the hell are you doing out so late?" "We were following Groucho." "The hell is a Groucho?" "Do you remember that stray cat that used to visit him?" "Maybe. He used to come around, and my grandpa used to feed him. He came around tonight and was injured. His leg was mauled or something. We tried to help him and ended up chasing him here." The man grunted and took a few steps out onto his porch. Then, staring out into the distance, his eyes widened. I could see the color draining from his large forehead. With his fists clenched and his veins pulsing in his neck, he started down the hill. We looked at each other, trembling a little too, and followed. When he reached the carcass, he bent over and glared for what seemed like an eternity. The longer he stared, the more color drained from his face. We stood a careful distance away from him and the cow. "This isn't the first time," he spoke in a gruff voice, almost whispering. "My cows were attacked years ago, but not like this." "What did it?" When Sasha asked this in the same tone, the man turned to look at her, gave her a half smile, and sighed. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." "There are coyotes and wolves out here, sometimes bears. Could have been anything, really. It's my fault, though, for not letting all the cows in." "What about the glaucus?" The words escaped my mouth without much forethought. They were on the tip of my tongue. Sasha nudged me in the ribs, and I said, sorry. The man contorted his lips and then let out a heavy laugh of surprise. "Haven't heard of that one in years. Surprised your grandpa told you that old story. He wasn't too proud of it. He didn't, actually. We found an old article about him. How did you... My father was part of the squad that hunted that creature sometime in the 30s. It's just a marmot or something, but it scared the hell out of the whole town. But how do you know for sure? Sasha nudged me again. I'm sorry, my boyfriend believes in all this supernatural crap. The man shook his head and smiled. I don't, but that's okay. A lot of people around here believe in it. Why was my grandpa not proud of it? The man shrugged. Hard to say. I don't remember much, but I think a lot of people were upset with them for starting trouble. Also, sometime in the 70s, a friend of your grandpa's led another expedition. A couple of kids got lost. Wait, what? Look, like I said, I don't remember much. There was a man in the group, Arthur Hines. He took a couple of kids to search for the Glaucus, and all but one returned. Arthur said they went off without him. Your grandfather defended him, and a lot of people in town weren't happy, especially when he got off. Your grandpa didn't speak much about it. Your dad didn't say much about it either. Does any part of you believe? The man clasped his hands together and bowed his head. I couldn't tell whether he was sobbing or deep in thought, but he stayed this way for a moment before speaking. I want to. My father definitely believed, and your grandfather did too. After what happened with Arthur, they were quiet about it. My grandfather didn't believe in anything paranormal. I felt myself shaking as I said it. Doesn't matter anyway, but if he believed in it, I think I should take that as a sign. Even though Sasha was behind me, I could sense her shake of the head and quieted. Go ahead. The man knelt down and tended to the cow. I gotta take care of this. It's getting cold. You should get yourself home. We understand, Sasha said, grabbing hold of my jacket. As we made our way back to the woods, the large man gave us a wave. Sasha was still shaking her head. What? What is it? What's your problem? Nothing. You were just kind of selfish. Selfish? How? Really, Jordan? This poor farmer's cow gets attacked, and you make it all about you and your stupid Glaucus. I know you just lost your grandpa, and you're going through a really tough time right now, but can't you see what's in front of you? We should have offered to help him. This is his livelihood. You don't seem to care much, though, do you? You don't get it, Sasha. I do care. I care enough to realize that what's happening to that poor man's cow is the result of what my grandpa was looking for all those years ago. What happened to Groucho was too. Do I know for sure? No, but I know that the marks on Groucho and the mauling on that cow isn't the work of some coyote or bear. I'm done with your stupid urban legend crap for the day. Let's go back to the car. What about Groucho? You saw what happened to that cow. She sighed and kicked at some snow with her shoe. Groucho's the only happy thing I have to remember my grandpa by. That can't be true. It is true. If he dies, it feels like I'm losing that last memory of my grandfather. We stood in silence together and struggled to find our words. A miserable breeze passed between us. We shivered and started ahead for the long path ahead of us. Further down, we couldn't see any lingering lights from the nearby houses. The path ahead was consumed by darkness. I stared into Sasha's honey-brown eyes for a long while before she whispered the words, "Okay," and started down the path. I grabbed the back of her shoulder. She stopped and looked up at me and smiled. Then she placed a cold, trembling hand in mine. You know, I don't want to take anything away from you, right? I know. It's just always seems to be like this with you. Every trip we go on, every abandoned place we enter, every moment we interact, it's on a ghost trip or an orb on your phone. You're so invested, and I wish I could be. I wish I could be as emotionally invested as you are. This is different. If you say so. I shrugged, and we continued down the path. I called out Groucho's name a few times, but I only heard the echo of my own voice carry off into the night. Sasha and I came to a point where a large metal fence blocked off the end of the path. The metal sign read private property. On the other side, I saw the cat in a small bank of snow. Groucho was pawing at the fence with his good paw, and his mangled one was buried a few inches in. "Jordan, he looks really bad. Can you get him?" I'm gonna try. I don't want to startle him." I knelt down in the snow. He stared at me with his mismatched eyes. He was purring loudly. I didn't know if he was purring because he was happy to see me, hurt, or a little bit of both. I poked a finger through the small hole in the fence and touched the pink beans on his paw. He didn't move. He rubbed his cheek against the fence. "I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. Okay, boy?" It was a promise I didn't know if I'd be able to keep, but at that moment I didn't care. "Sasha, come to where I am and pet him. I'm going to try to climb the fence." She nodded. She knelt down to where I had poked 2 fingers through the fence. With my eyes on the small cat, I stuck my fingers through the rings on the fence and began to climb. Though it stood only 4 feet from the ground, I made sure to climb slowly as Groucho started to rub his cheek against Sasha's fingers, tilting his head and closing his eyes. As I launched myself over the fence, I heard something howl in the distance, only it was more like a screech than a howl. Groucho's eyes widened, tail puffy and enlarged, and he darted to the right of the fence and into the woods. "You have to climb the fence, Sasha. We have to find him." "Jordan, that sounds like a coyote. We could get hurt." I was convinced it wasn't, but I knew arguing with Sasha would be pointless, so I gestured for her to climb over. From the pocket of my jeans, I pulled out a black switchblade. I turned the knob on the handle, revealing the blade. Sasha groaned and shook her head. "Oh, God, why do you have a switchblade on you? You've been dating me for how many years?" "I've had it since I was in Eagle Scouts." "Too many, apparently," she mumbled. "Do you think you're going to have to defend yourself against the coyote with a switchblade? Groucho's clearly fast and good at hiding. We can go tomorrow." "He might be dead tomorrow, and that's not a... Forget it. Just climb over the fence." Reluctantly, Sasha climbed the fence. As she jumped, she tore part of the jacket on the jagged fence rings. I managed to grab a hold of her waist, but her weight, combined with the force of the fall, sent us both into the snowbank. The snow engulfed us, and before I could ask Sasha if she was okay, we heard the awful screeching reverberate through the forest. "It's a coyote, Jordan," she said, standing up and brushing snow off her. "Haven't you heard a coyote before?" "Yeah, but this is worse. A lot worse." We heard the screech again, a screech so awful it sliced my eardrums and churned my stomach. The screech, wherever it had come from and whatever it had come from, sounded like the screams of someone being tortured over and over again. This screech put the cries of a coyote to shame. What followed the screech was a combination of howls and hisses. "It's Groucho." "Jordan, with my knife still wielded, I darted into the forest, not knowing or caring at that moment if Sasha was following me. As I ran, I forced myself through the razor pine leaves and over serrated stone pieces that stabbed my sneakers. When my body hit a branch, I felt myself fall into the darkness and tumbled down a long hill. I tried to tuck my body, but the stones and fallen branches penetrated every inch of me on the way down. Halfway through my fall, I heard what sounded like Sasha screaming, or maybe it was the creature screaming. Then my body came to a hard stop against something solid. My body aching, I looked up at the stone, cracked bird bath that marked the property of a small brick house covered in moss. The house looked like it had been unoccupied for years. The windows had no blinds and reflected the total blackness from within. I brushed myself off and looked up towards the hill where I could see only rows of trees. I patted both pockets, realized I had dropped my phone somewhere on the hill. I could no longer hear anything beyond a cool breeze and some rummaging in the woods above. I had to find a way to call Sasha. I had no idea how far I had fallen or in which direction. I scanned the area to see if there were any other houses nearby. The brick house, however, was only surrounded by woods. As I ran towards the front of the house, the snow drenching my feet up to the ankles, which throbbed and felt like metal weights dragging me down with every step. To the right of the house, I saw a small figure standing with its back against the wall, looming in the shadows. Reluctantly, I stepped closer to see a dark-skinned boy wrapped in a wool coat, wearing a red ski cap. He looked no more than 8 or 9. I glanced at the window above the boy. They were filled with even more darkness than the others. The boy tilted his head in the opposite direction of me. His back was stiff, his hands were stiffer, his large brown eyes fixed on that spot in the distance that never wavered. He must have heard me, because he put a finger to his lips. "Can I—" "Shh! You'll scare it," he whispered, his voice small and trilly. "Scare what?" I knelt down to his level and lowered my voice. "What am I gonna scare?" "I forgot the name of it," he murmured, eyes still fixed on that spot. "Who told you about it?" "The man I'm here with." "What's his name?" I didn't have time to process what was happening in front of me. My first instinct was to protect the boy. I didn't know what I was protecting the boy from or from whom, but something told me he wasn't supposed to be here, and he wasn't safe. "Shh! What's your name?" "I forgot that too." Are you okay?" The boy looked down. I put an arm on his tiny shoulder. After a long time, he shook his head. Forgetting that I didn't have my phone on me, I tapped my pocket and swore under my breath. The boy smirked. "What's your name? Did he take you here?" Silence. I gripped the switchblade inside my pocket and looked over my shoulder at whatever he expected to come towards us. I couldn't leave him alone, but I didn't know what I could say to make him move. So I stared at the boy and continued making conversation. "Did he tell you about the glaucus?" "Yeah," he said softly. The boy was breathing very heavily now. I was too. With 2 hands on his shoulder, I guided this boy toward me. He didn't resist. He didn't look at me, though. His eyes fixed on the snow. As interested as I was in the boy and what he might have to say about the glaucus, the word "he shouldn't be here" played over and over again in my mind. The reality of the 8-year-old boy alone in the dead of the night and an old kidnapper made me absolutely nauseous and spiked my adrenaline. I was not going to leave his side. "I know you don't know me, but you're not safe here. My name's Jordan. My girlfriend and I are looking for a cat. I got lost and I found you. We can bring you—" He shushed me again and crouched low to the ground as the window to the house slammed open. I crouched down beside him and held him tightly. Clutching the blade in my pocket, I whispered for the boy to stay low as I rose to my feet. When I sprang up, the window slammed shut again. "He knows you're here. He said I got to look for it alone, or it will get me. Listen to me. We're going to run as fast as we can towards those woods. That's where it comes from. He told me not to move." I swore again under my breath. This time, he did not smirk. He did not move. At that moment, the house lights flickered on. "We are going to run, okay?" He nodded and bit his lip. I grabbed his tiny hand, which was frigid. At that moment, I thought about running to the road, but wasn't certain where the road would lead to. I also wasn't certain that I could handle running full speed with an 8-year-old in the snow up the hill. When we started running, he tripped into the snow. "Where do you think you're going with my friend?" said a voice that carried from the house. The voice belonged to an elderly man, but seemed otherworldly the way it croaked and echoed. "Peter, don't go with that man. It's not safe in the woods." Mortified, I leaned my head to see an elderly man standing on the brick patio in front of the house. He was too far away to discern any facial features other than round and bald, but close enough to see the frail outlines of his skeletal figure draped in an oversized plaid shirt and black dockers. His body was so tiny that the wind would blow it away in a moment, yet he stood there menacingly, his sagging lips curling into a smile. "My name's not Peter," the boy suddenly screamed, bouncing up from the snow. He grabbed tight onto my arm and squinted. I pulled out the switchblade from my pocket and flipped the blade outward. "There's no need to do that," the voice cried. Then his cries morphed into a menacing whisper that carried just as clearly. "Now, let my friend Peter go." "My name's not Peter," he shouted again. "It's Jonah, and you know it." "This is what's gonna happen." I felt my words and entire body tremble as I spoke. "Jonah is coming with me, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it." My words didn't faze the old man. He stood in the same stance, sagging lips and a mutated smile. "Don't go into the woods, Peter. My name is Jonah," he shouted again. "We're going to run now," I said quietly. When my eyes met his, I could tell by the way that they widened that he knew the graveness of the situation. "I'll be right behind you." As Jonah ran towards the opening in the woods, I stared back towards the house, my knife still drawn. The man was gone now, the house completely dark. I hesitated for a moment before I caught up with Jonah, who was standing at the foot of the hill, staring at the endless snow above us. Placing my switchblade back in my pocket, I knelt down towards him, asking if he wanted help getting up the hill. He nodded, then he climbed on my shoulders without hesitation, and I began to climb, holding tightly to his sneakers. The weight of the boy and the incline of the hill tired me quickly, but I pushed on, and with every passing sound, I held on tighter. When we were far enough up the hill and away from the house, I started to ask the boy some questions about how he was and how he was feeling, and most importantly, if he was going to be okay. He either said nothing at all or spoke with a brief yes or no to my questions. When I could see the top of the hill, I asked Jonah how he got there. "I don't know. I was sleeping, then I was in the house." I swallowed deeply and struggled to find my words. "When did you get there?" "Today, I think." Did he bring you there?" "I don't know. It was really dark, and he was really old and scary." "Can you think of anything about his name?" I asked. "He said to call him Mr. Eyes, I think, or Mr. Hayes or something." Wait, did he hurt you, Jonah?" "No, he was weird. He wanted me to look for the glocky thingy." The Glaucus? Why?" I asked. "I don't know. He said it was really cool and all the kids were looking for it." "Other kids?" "Yeah, other kids. He said there were other kids and they were looking for the glocky thingy. Then he started calling me Peter, but my name's not Peter. It's Jonah." "Did you see the other kids?" "No, he said they got lost looking for the glocky thingy and that I could find them. I was scared of it, though. I didn't want to look for it, but I didn't say anything." Although the hill was no longer in sight, the old man's voice carried from the bottom of it. "Peter! Come back, Peter!" "Don't say anything," I said, putting a finger to my lips and motioning for him to kneel next to me. "Peter! Where are you, Peter?" he asked again. I could tell Jonah was suppressing his instincts to shout, "My name's not Peter," again, at the old man. He clenched his small fists by his side. A cold breeze blew over us. Underneath my legs, I felt something solid poking me beneath the leaves. It was my smartphone. The screen was cracked, its battery drained to 2%. 10 missed calls flashed across the screen from Sara. When I was sure the voice was out of range, I called her. "Jordan, where—" "Sasha," I said, lowering my voice immediately. "I need you to call the police, and I have a little boy with me. His name's Jonah. He's been... Send them to my..." Before I could finish my sentence, the phone screen drained to black. I reached my arm out to where Jonah would be, but he was gone. I sprang up and immediately screamed his name. turning around in a dizzying circle, not thinking of the old man or whether he would hear me or not. "Jonah! Jonah!" I screamed once more, breathing heavily. "Oh my God. Jonah, can you hear me?" Only the deafening silence of the wind answered my call. In the panicked moments, a memory came to me of the time I got lost in the woods behind Granddad's house when I was about Jonah's age. I remembered my granddad telling me to look for any light in the distance that looked like a house light. I wondered if Jonah had been told the same thing. With nothing left to lose, I started running towards a faint light that glimmered in the distance. I forced my aching body far enough up the hill until I actually saw the boy chasing a small, shadowy figure with a swooping tail. "Jonah, what are you doing? Stay right where you are." "It's the Glocky thingy! It's the Glocky thingy!" I felt my heart sink in my chest as the boy swooped down to grab the dark figure that stood no more than a couple of feet tall, with pointed ears and an arched back. "Jonah, don't touch that! Jonah!" As I sprinted the rest of the way towards him, I saw the boy lean down by Groucho, who was now even more scratched up than before, missing several patches of fur. He purred as the boy knelt down to pet him. "Oh, Jonah, that's a cat. He's very nice. His name's Groucho." "Are you sure? He's kind of ugly." "He's hurt. Never mind. This path. We're on the path that will lead us back." I picked up the wounded Groucho and held him over my shoulder with my left hand, and held Jonah with my other in his tiny grip. The three of us walked cautiously down the path until we saw Sasha looming in the distance. As soon as Sasha saw the three of us, she ran for us. Standing behind her was the farmer with his rifle in hand. Sasha threw her arms around me and Groucho, while Nick knelt down to check on Jonah. Sasha told me that police were on their way and that they thought they knew the name of the missing boy. Jonah was shaking, so was Groucho. John took off his jacket and put it on the boy, then threw a scarf at her to tend to Groucho's wounds. The cat was purring on my shoulder, but still visibly shaken. "Is your name Jonah Williams?" Nick asked the boy softly. The boy nodded and turned to us. "There was an Amber Alert out for him about a month ago. I don't know how he got all the way to Windsor. Jonah, do you know who took you?" The boy shook his head. "His name's Mr. Eyes." Nick's face drained a ghostly white. Do you mean Mr. Hines?" The boy nodded. "I thought he was..." "Oh, God," Sasha whispered. "He called me Peter, but my name's not Peter. It's Jonah." "Is there anyone in your family named Peter?" Nick asked. The boy shook his head. "How about Pete?" Nick asked after a moment. I think I have a Grandpa Pete." The three of us exchanged the same wide-eyed look. "Does your grandpa have a last name?" Jonah nodded. "Pete was the only one who made it back from Arthur Hines's trip. He looked just like his grandson. He never said anything about what happened. The police couldn't get anything out of him, so Arthur got off." Nick couldn't say anything else before a swarm of police officers stormed our way with flickering lights. There were well over a dozen of them, and a few armed SWAT team members as well. A red-headed female officer escorted Jonah down the path. A male officer asked the three of us to come with him. In no time, the path behind my grandfather's house was full of police activity, and German shepherds barking in the distance. As we came within eyesight of the house, we saw squad cars lining the streets as well, and there were several news crew trucks, too. Time moved in images too rapid for me to process, and by the look on Sasha and Nick's face, it seemed the same for them as well. The three of us waited for the officer by my grandfather's house, but he hurried back into the woods at the call of his name. In the driveway, the female officer let go of Jonah as he rushed into the arms of a man with long dreadlocks and a woman in a puffy brown coat. The family hugged and cried as the wintry mix fell over us. I stroked Groucho gently while Sasha wrapped an arm around my waist. We watched the police futile attempt to keep the news crews at bay by drawing caution tape over the end of the driveway. We stood in silence while the crews pushed their way towards the family, shouts and barks echoing increasingly in the distance. "So Pete never said anything?" I asked after a long time. Not a thing, Nick said. Who knows what that old creep did to him? Who knows what he saw? For the rest of the night, one moment blurred into another. From the hours' worth of questioning back at the station to the hours of waiting at the animal hospital for Groucho to get stitched up. For most of those moments, we were silent. For the moments when we weren't, we listened to Nick's story of my grandfather and what little he knew about Arthur Hines. Arthur was the one who led my grandfather on the expedition all those years ago to find the dreaded Glaucus. Arthur was the one to convince him what they saw was really it. He was my grandfather's right-hand man, and my grandfather trusted him to a fault. What happened to the children was a shame too great for my grandfather to carry, a shame he never spoke of again. After our 15 minutes of local news fame, we barely spoke about it either. The officer never found Arthur Hines that night, or the house he lived in, despite the pleas from us and the Williams family to keep looking in the area. After a couple more months, they stopped looking altogether. The news coverage of the investigation died with the case file. We ended up giving Groucho to the family once he was fully healed. It provided them with a brief happiness, but eventually that happiness turned to bitterness when the public and the authorities forgot about the case altogether. Eventually, they stopped returning our calls and social media messages. Sasha and I didn't blame them. They were just sad there was nothing more that could be done. Our shared sadness carried through the spring until one day we received a phone call from Nick that he had found something on his farm. I woke up to screaming last night. There were awful coyote-like screams, even worse, followed by the chewing noises. They came down the path. Did you find anything? Yeah. When I got there, I found a pair of bloody dentures just lying in a fist-sized paw print, surrounded by a bunch of half-footprints from a boot or something. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. It was like someone fell there, but there was nothing else or no one else there, except a few loose strands of silver hair.
You just never know what you might find lurking when you go having a look where you're not supposed to. Coming up next, we have a trucker who discovers something strange under the truck in front of him. So, let's delve into the reflections from the highway.
Driving is easily the most boring part of my job. I work as a salesman for an all-in-one printer company. Business has been slow the last couple of years, with the rise of personal printers, but our loyal customer base has really helped us get through these troubling times. That's why I was in Garrison and Marco's attorney at law that day. I'd been trying to sell them on the latest color all-in-one model to replace their current one, which was a few years old. They had sent me back to the office with a "we'll think about it," and I had started my 4-hour drive back to said office. That's how I came to be on the highway behind the truck in the first place. The sun was setting when I left the law firm. By the time I got on the highway, it was already dark. I mingled with the other cars as we merged in with the big rigs that made the interstate their home. I was behind a particularly large 18-wheeler when I first noticed the thing. It started out as a reflection. Have you ever noticed how an animal's eyes will reflect the light? Well, it was like that. I was sitting behind him with my low beams on when I noticed the sparkle from underneath the trailer. It was 3 or 4 small reflective points, and in my mind, I sort of obsessed over it. What could possibly be making those reflections? Some sort of axle? Maybe something ornamental that the driver had stuck under this truck. It probably seems silly to obsess over something like that as you sit reading my story. But when you're stuck in traffic on the interstate, your mind searches for all sorts of things to occupy your time. Whatever it was midway between the front wheels and the back wheels, too far into the truck for me to really make it out. I didn't think it was alive or anything, but it was a fun little mystery. I was stuck in gridlock. Some wreck up the way had brought us to a halt, and as I adjusted the radio in the beat-up old car that gave the salesman a drive, I found my eyes returning to that thing again and again. My brain just wouldn't leave it alone, and I began to create reasons for the thing to be under there. Maybe it was for stability. Maybe it was something he had put under there so people didn't hit the back of the trailer in the middle of the night. Maybe it was just one of those stupid things that people often hook to their trucks just because they can. Whatever it was, my mind had decided to obsess over it. I was watching it when my cell phone rang, and as I fished it out of my pocket, I found my eyes rising to see the thing as I said hello. "So, can we go ahead and put them down for a new printer?" the boss asked. They said they'd have to think about it, but they also said there's nothing wrong with their current printer, so I wouldn't expect to see any orders from them. Damn, I was really counting on offloading a couple of these to the firm. Did you tell them about the added features? Of course I did, sir. And I was about to tell him that I was no rookie salesman when I looked up and almost dropped the phone. The thing I had been focused on for the last 20 miles had moved. It was subtle, but when you've been staring at it for as long as I had, you notice these things. The thin fiber filament had shifted somehow, and the pattern had changed. I was almost sure of it. I could hear my boss asking if I was still there, and I assured him that I was. I told him I would be back in the office in a few hours, and he told me just to head home. I could turn in my reports tomorrow. Sounds like you could use the sleep. You're sounding a little jittery. I thanked him and told him I'd see him tomorrow, before hanging up the phone and looking back at the thing under the truck. I could also see 6 surfaces reflected back at me now, instead of the 4 I had seen a moment ago. They looked even more like eyes. Whatever wreck there was up ahead, they must have cleared it out of the way. We were suddenly moving along again at a brisk pace, and I was glad for the shift in speed. My mind had suddenly turned what looked like some kind of ornament into something dangerous, and I really wanted to be from behind this truck. There was no chance of getting around them, though. The traffic was still pretty tight, and I was pretty well trapped behind this 18-wheeler and the 18-wheeler beside me. So for the next 2 hours we drove, the most nerve-wracking 2 hours of my life. The longer we drove, the more I was convinced that it was no optical illusion. Whatever was under there was definitely moving, and it had quite a few legs that I could see. It was using 2 of the thinner ones to hold itself under the truck, and the other 6 or 8, or maybe even as many as 10, were anchoring it to the truck itself. What was worse were all those reflective surfaces that I still thought of as eyes. They were staring straight at me the whole time, and I began to believe that it knew I could see it. I shook my head the first time I thought this. I was tired, I had had too much coffee, and I was just seeing things. These were the excuses that ran around and around inside my head, like a dog chasing his tail. I didn't want to believe that I was stuck behind a truck, carrying a very different sort of cargo. I wanted to believe that I was just seeing things, and I was making things up to pass the time. That sort of delusion only lasted until the thing moved closer. You see, the longer I watched it, the longer it watched me. I don't know if it knew I could see it, but it didn't seem to like the level of scrutiny I was giving it. It was midway between the cab, watching me like a predator watching its prey. The longer it went on, the less safe I felt inside my car. Something that big could surely get through the window, or break the windshield, and I would have nowhere to go in this gridlock. But I was still trying to be rational, trying to be realistic. There was no way that whatever it was alive. It was a trick of the light. It was my mind playing tricks on me. When I finally got home, safe behind the door of my apartment, I would laugh about how silly I had been, and feel really stupid. I was a grown man behind the wheel of a car, jumping at shadows. I began to use this idea as a security blanket, wrapping myself in it so I didn't just go crazy right there behind the wheel of my car. That was when it moved. The reflective eyes shifted suddenly. I don't mean that they blinked or anything. I mean they shifted. One minute I was looking at it, and the next it was sliding beneath the underside of the trailer. Suddenly those eyes were coming closer. They were less than 10 feet away from my car now, peering from under the trailer at me as I tried to maintain my speed. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. Whatever it was had finally gotten tired of being watched, and had decided to get closer. I felt a sudden stirring of primal fear. This must have been how early man had felt when it encountered something it just didn't understand. When it saw the long teeth and heard the growl of some unknown predator. When it saw the all-too-intelligent eyes of an animal that was a little too human reflected in the darkness. When it came to realize that the safety of its cave could also be a trap. I imagine that it felt just as helpless as I did now. Helpless, but intent on survival. I tried again to convince myself that I was being silly. This was nothing more than a trick of the light, some errant spiderweb under the cab that my headlights were catching that just now came loose and was presenting itself as some sort of boogeyman for me to be afraid of. I suddenly knew how to alleviate this fear. I would flip my high beams on. The high beams would show me the underside of the truck, and I could see that the source of my fears was nothing at all. I reached for the switch, my hands much less steady than I thought they should be, my fingers wrapping around the knob. For a moment, I just couldn't bring myself to turn the switch. Did I really want to know? Did I really want this thing to know that I knew? Once the monster in the closet knows that you know it's there, does it have any choice but to eat you? I shook my head and flipped the switch on. I know now that I shouldn't have done that. What was under the cab was no spider web, but it was the monster I had feared it was. It was a spider the size of a large dog. It was easily 4.5 feet tall, and it was hunkered beneath the trailer's cluster of wheels. It looked at me upside down, with its legs clinging to the metal, its fangs dripping some translucent liquid and clicking together very fast. It made a high, angry sound that I could hear from behind my closed windows, and the look it gave me on its far too expressive face was terrifying. My brain seemed to give me a choice between fight or flight, and in my cowardice, I chose flight. I pulled around the truck, pulling onto the soft shoulder of the road, and drove around it and the line of angry cars. Fortunately, there were no police officers in that line. There was an exit ramp not too terribly far from the truck, and I whipped into the on-ramp and pulled away from the highway into the small gas station about a mile later. It took me nearly 30 minutes to make my breath regular, expecting that spider creature to attack my car any minute. When I had control of myself again, I drove home. It took an extra hour, but I took side roads and back ways the whole way. So often in these stories, there's a moment of horror that comes afterward. Some accident, a truck found abandoned on the side of the road, a dead body in the truck stop, but there was none of that for me. I never heard a news report alluding to anything strange or out of the ordinary. I could almost forget about it until I closed my eyes and see those far too expressive eyes looking at me as the high beams pin it to the underside and their lights. I take back roads whenever I travel now, avoiding the highway at all costs. I avoid big rigs as well. I don't ever want to see anything like that again.
You just never know what you might find out on the road. Our next story is by Copper Abbey 6, and it's about a legend that gets a little bit too scary. So, let's hear a story about the lanky, leery lasso man.
I've read somewhere that booze inhibits the part of your brain that creates dreams. Maybe that's a load of crap. Maybe nightmares are born somewhere else. Who's to say? All I know is that I was pissed drunk when I collapsed on my mattress that night. Yet, I'm back here all the same. Back in this rotting wooden carcass. Yellow, late afternoon daylight slices lazily through the gaps between the rotten boards. Steady, continuous flecks of bloated dust dance through the rays. The dirt floor around me is strewn with ancient browning hay, stale and brittle, stinking with the dried horse piss of a century and a half. It's a spacious, musty room that I stand in, probably 60 yards long from the front door to the back, and at least as wide. The ceiling is high and vaulted, as you'd expect from a place like this. The apotheosis of eerie, long-forgotten, off-the-highway wooden barns. This one sits at the top of a gentle hill, at the end of a yawning, breezy field, like a decomposing specter. A pointed tower extended off the roof, sagging drunkenly to one side, curling slightly back in on itself, like a giant spindly index finger. Like it's coaxing you to pull your car over to the shoulder and take a leisurely jaunt across the swaying grass. Like it has something to show you. Hell, I know it does. It's shown me before. Right on cue, the shadows around me are doing a different dance than that. The creaks and groans are a bit less passive, a bit more aggressive. The massive room around me is not so empty and spacious. Then there's a louder creak from above, loud enough to sound as though it's calling my attention, and I raise my head towards the ceiling for a look. I'm never able to stop myself. Bodies, dozens of them, hanging from the withered, crisscrossing rafters. They're strung up from the down beam like haphazard tree ornaments, some tight against the ceiling, some with enough slack in their fraying ropes to hang down within 10 feet of my head. They're in various stages of decay. I see one that's especially wilted, with shrunken black, lifeless skin. It swings inconsequentially, almost weightless. The face looks like it's sewn together from dried leaves, but there's another to its right, hanging 15 feet below it, and it's much newer, bloated, purple and slick, ready to burst like a balloon and fill the air with noxious gas. The sane thing would be to turn tail and run, screaming, hands over my head, out the big wooden door and back to where I came from. But again, dream logic is steering this ship now, and I didn't actually come from anywhere. Another sound joins the symphony of woody creaks and groans. Dull footfalls, one after the other. I can picture the worn-down boot heels from the sound alone. I force my eyes open slowly, ignoring every fiber of my being that screams and begs to keep them closed. Nightmares don't allow for blissful ignorance. The figure emerges slowly from the farthest horse stall on the left wall, sauntering more than walking, and at first I have to squint my eyes to make out any sharp lines, any defining features. But there aren't any. It's only a shadow, and an impossible one at that. There's no light coming in at the right angle to create one. But it's here, all the same. It's tall, stretching what must have been 7 feet up the wall, and thin. If I were looking at a real living person, I might think he must be malnourished, but even again, I doubt that traditional food is the kind he's interested in. The shadow's right arm swings casually at its side. His left is raised up, loosely gripping some protrusion that juts from his left shoulder. An unmistakable shape sits atop his head, a wide-brimmed hat, the front brim bent skyward. A thin, spindly shadow extends from his mouth, a piece of straw, perhaps. He walks slowly, paying me no mind, till he reaches the middle of the far wall. Then he stops, leans forward slightly, and spits. A shadowy streak of phantom tobacco juice splats to the ground. The shadow stands still, perfectly still, too still, until I'm almost sure that it won't move again. And it doesn't move. Not really, anyway. What it does next feels less like moving and more like morphing, developing like a Polaroid picture from blank darkness into full, vivid reality. Suddenly the shadow is full, 3 dimensions, and the transformation was so understated and ephemeral that I didn't catch how or when it began. It looks like a man, just as tall and gaunt as his shadow had suggested, and dressed from head to toe in dusty, tattered clothes that have no discernible color. His forearms and face are the only exposed skin, if you could call whatever revolting membrane something like this wears as skin, and they're caked in grime and soot. A large, droopy mustache sits above his lip, which is curled upward and backward to reveal something between a sneer and a snarl. What shards of teeth exist are rotten, brown, and sunken, like cockroach soldiers standing at attention. His left eye is covered by a leather patch. His right gleams electric yellow through the dim barn. His left hand is still raised, loosely gripping what I can now see as a rope, coiled around his left shoulder like a scaly, undead snake. I'm not afraid now. Afraid is too simple a word for it. I'm frozen, paralyzed by a cocktail of terror and revulsion that fills me from my feet to my scalp. He's almost 50 feet from me, but I can smell him, sour, dank, alive in the most nauseating way, 'cause he absolutely shouldn't be. We stand there, facing each other, immobile as marble statues, for what has to be a full minute. Neither of us make a sound. Then, voices do come, but not from either of us. They come instead from those figures swinging slowly above us, synchronized like a hellish choir, raspy and dry, not generated by moving lips or breathing lungs, but emanating from them as a collective. He's the lanky, leering lasso man, got a twirling rope and a steady hand. His rope's his brush, the barn's his easel, and he's pegged you, boy, for a yellow weasel. The lasso man remained perfectly still, but his yellow eye glimmers with satisfaction. His puppets are speaking on his behalf, and it pleases him. He don't like a man with a jelly spine. He'd like to kill you. He'd like it fine. Around your neck, then around the oak. He'll yank you up. You'll squeal, you'll choke. You're meek, you're soft. Your manhood's soured. You're pathetic, boy. You're an awful coward. Can't make the cut. Ain't even one. You're lost cause, boy, and your time is done. Now, after what feels like a minor eternity, he moves. His left arm drops from his side, bringing the coiled rope with it. With the practiced nonchalance of many years, he draws out an end, which has been knotted with a loose loop. His time is vast. His rope swings long. He's waiting for you to prove him wrong. It'll never happen. You won't never show. You ain't a man who'll stand toe to toe. The lasso's loop, now hanging patiently, begins to sway back and forth, slowly at first. Then it swings faster, longer. After a few swings, he cracks his wrist, sending it up, around in a full loop. It fires up above his head, then brings it back around so it scrapes the floor with a meaty thunk that reports violently through the barn. His eyes gleam brighter. He brings the loop around again. Thwack! Crusty straw scatters at the impact, a puff of dust swirling with it. He sees you well. He sees you whole. He sees the depths of your timid soul. Try to stand your ground, rebuke the shame, but you'll swing with us, boy, all the same. He swings his rope steadily, and the thwack accompanies the chant like a monotone. He's the lanky, leering lasso man. Face him down if you think you can. Got just one leering, jeering eye. He'll use it, boy, to watch you die. The phantom continues to search me with his singular burning eye. No visible movement, but the lazy crack of his wrist. What happens now? Renewed fright pours through me like a wave of cold water, but I decide I don't want to stick around to find out. I close my eye again, clench my fist, trying to will myself out from the dark corner of my subconscious, back to the waking world, and to an undoubtedly sweaty set of bed sheets. But the barn refuses to fade, stubbornly continuing to exist around me. The bodies above swing, erratic arcs through the rafters, crashing wildly into each other. The fresher ones impact with wet slaps, the older ones with dusty thuds and the crack of bones. Now, their impossible, mouthless voices are back again, not reciting chants this time, but making insane guttural noises, screams, laughter, I can't tell. Screaming, creaking, slapping, groaning, and thudding. Dull boot heels thudding together as they move towards me. He's done waiting. He's coming. I spin around, my feet finally free of their fear-induced anchor, and I run for the door behind me. I skid on hay as I reach it and start yanking on the iron handle. At first it doesn't budge. 100 years of grime and rust have settled it stubbornly into place. The footsteps are louder now, closer. The rope hits the ground again, and I feel a gust of air from the swing. I give the handle one last desperate yank, and the door relents. It whines angrily open, and the afternoon sun streaks in through the gap that can't be more than a foot wide. It's wide enough. I squeeze through sideways, feeling splinters tear through my shirt on both sides, lodging into my chest and back. I try to run, but my foot catches on the edge of the door, throwing me to the ground in a heap. I'm up instantly, running harder than I have since my Little League days. The 300 yards to the road may as well be 300 miles. I make my arms and legs pump together. Within seconds, the barnyard dirt beneath my feet becomes grass. Now that I've reached the field, I feel a jolt of elated relief. It's short-lived, though. A sudden whoosh joins the sound of my panting, and something falls neatly around my head, settling on my shoulders. Then the loop yanks tight around my neck, and I'm stopped cold. My feet kick crazily in the air in front of me as I'm whiplashed backwards. My panting is stifled by a choke, and I feel my neck crack as it's yanked from its proper place. I'm on my back. He's dragging me back towards the barn. Rocks and stickers tear hungrily through my clothes as I grind across the stiff prairie grass. But I begin to slide more easily once I'm back on the dirt. I claw desperately at my neck, trying and failing to get even a finger between the rope and my throat. No use. I'm not seeing real images anymore, just cloudy, fading shades. The glow of sunlight disappears immediately as I'm yanked back into the darkness of the barn. Finally, the pulling stops, and I'm left to lay still for a moment. A bit of pressure is released. I manage a couple of raspy breaths of stale air. There are thundering boot heels again. They stop a couple of feet from my head, and I can feel him standing over me. I can smell him, like rotting citrus and stale tobacco. He yanks me upward. My neck cracks again as more ligaments are torn out of place, and I scramble to my knees in an effort to keep him from ripping my head clear from my shoulders. His hands hold me there, and after my eyes get another few seconds to readjust to the darkness, he crouches down so we're face to face. I use the last of my strength to clench my eyes shut. I don't want his grimy skin and glowing eye to be the last thing I ever see. He's close now, his nose only inches from mine, and he breathes heavily. I've never known a smell to be so horrible. When he speaks, his voice is humming, a growl, a legion of locusts buzzing in unison. Do you know this rope was made for runners, boy? There's another whoosh as he casts the free end of the rope over the rafter, looping it easily over one of the higher beams, and now I'm being lifted a few feet at a time. He's hoisting me up to join the others. My feet are barely kicking, my arms hanging uselessly at my side. I have no strength left to claw at the noose. My vision fades completely now as all the oxygen leaves my brain and the world around me grows dim. I lose all feeling in my legs, now my hands, now my chest. My hearing is the last thing to go, but just before it does, I hear his ghoulish choir begin their chant again. He's the lanky, leering lasso man. Now, and only now, do I finally wake up, choking and shivering, tangled in a set of bed sheets which are completely soaked. The barn and all its horrors are gone, but their effects linger like an afterimage on my soul. I sit upright, trying and failing to slow my heart. My face is slick with tears and snot, and as I catch my breath, I realize with some embarrassment that sweat isn't the only reason the sheets are damp. Not that there's anyone else to feel embarrassment for. I feel out at the other side of the bed to confirm that it's empty, And of course it is. Even my bunny rabbit upstairs neighbors are quiet as church mice tonight. God, I'm so damn alone. And God, my place is so damn quiet. Since there's no other person to grab onto, I settle for my old baseball bat that I always keep leaned against the nightstand. I grip its rubber handle and hold it to my chest, enjoying the cold feel of the aluminum on my skin. It's relatively small, the one I swung during my 12-year-old session. Over the next 5 and final years of my baseball career, I owned a variety of bigger ones, heavier ones, better ones. Still, there's something about this one that maintained its special appeal to me, because I miss that season sometimes. I miss being 12, the year I batted a .486, pulled straight A's, convinced Maddie Taylor to be my date for the 8th grade dinner dance. That kid had an iron grip on his life, simple though it was. A future with a shine of polished chrome. What the hell would he think of the pathetic bastard he'd turned into, 16 years down the line? I throw my bed sheets in the washer and head for the living room, with my bat still in my hand. I take a few fiery gulps from the amber bottle on the counter, then slam the cork in and flop onto the couch. It's suede, this thing. Can you believe it? A guy like me, with a salary like mine, buying a brand new suede couch he absolutely couldn't afford, to stick in an apartment that he can just barely afford. Of course, at the time, she insisted that it was the only one to get. Serious adult furniture for a serious adult couple. So I'd grinned and swiped the credit card like the dumb, love-struck puppy I was. Now, one serious adult breakup later, I'm sitting here alone, the luxurious feel of a month's pay under my ass. Time passes. Just how long, I have no idea, and my adrenaline cools. My eyelids are heavy again, and the cushion is cloud-like. I feel myself sinking, melting, peacefully away. Thwack! And I'm on my feet, bat raised high, my pulse jackhammering against the back of my eyeballs. I've started to lose track of time. It slipped away from me, bit by bit. My routine continues. Shower, toothbrush, coffee, drive to work, spreadsheets, numbers, graphs, drive home. But more and more, it all seems to be happening on a sort of mental cruise control. No real active participation on my end. I'm interacting with the world through my thick, soupy curtain that keeps me sleepy, out of touch, dulling my senses until an occasional thwack yanks me back to reality. My days are drenched in sickly yellow, like the sun is a distant memory, and my world is lit only by his eye. I'm lonely. I find myself pulling my phone out just to stare at the contact photo. The press of a button. I can hear her voice. After all, what the hell are my pride and self-respect worth when I'm losing my damn mind? I hate this room. I hate this apartment. Every corner, every crevice is decorated with knickknacks, filled with trinkets that I never liked, never wanted. Is there anything in here that was actually my choice? A nervous voice pulls me away from my brain-dead spreadsheet scrolling. Apparently the big guy wants to see me. Crap news, no doubt. I trudge down the fluorescent hallway to his office. On the way, I pass by a framed poster of a rock climber, its caption informing me that today is the best day to be my best self. The big guy is pissed. That much is obvious as soon as I settle into the swiveling chair on the receiving end of his desk. Red, sweaty face, dark stains beneath his pits. He wants to know what I've been doing the last 2 weeks, if there's any figures I can show him, any concrete evidence that I've been doing something resembling work. I answer honestly, I really don't know. He raises his voice, probably trying to intimidate me into subservience, but I'm already gone again, back behind the curtain of yellow fog. 2 weeks? Was that what he said? Is that how long it's been since the nightmare started? His hand comes down on the desk. Thwack! Again, he grits his jaw, verging on a full tantrum, but he takes a deep breath, composing himself, tells me to listen. He's got a brother too, he says, an older one, and if something were to happen to his older brother, something like what happened to mine, well, Anyway, he guesses he'd be a little off-kilter too. But time is money, and this is a result-based business. And if I can't find a way to snap out of this funk, well, he'd expect me, as a team player, to do the stand-up thing and take some unpaid time off. There, he's said his piece. He wants to know what I think. What do I think? Good question. Truthfully, there's plenty that I'm thinking about the big guy. But, being the sane, self-preserving person that I once was, it had never crossed my mind to tell him. Maybe it's time I did. I tell him that a good tailor will know how to let the collar out of his shirt a bit, because right now he looks like it's choking him. He looks like a cherry push pop, squeezing out of a cardboard tube. He's upright in his chair now, stiff and straight as a 2x4. There's spittle forming at the corner of his mouth, but no words. Not yet. This feels good. I decide to keep telling him what I think. Where was I? Right. What's the deal with him and Janice from accounting? I don't think there's anything cool about infidelity. Not if you're just going to sneak around with some woman who's fatter and older than the one you're already with at home. What else do I think? Last month at that big client meeting, I think it was total crap to pass my concept off as your own. It was a big pitch, the kind that really could have changed my portfolio, helped me establish a genuine reputation, but he had to go and snatch it with those big, sweaty sausage roll hands of his, which was a mistake on his part, because everyone knows he's too damn stupid to create a pitch like that for himself. That was what I think. Naturally, he's unimpressed with what I have to say. He invites me to leave with a voice that rattles the walls. He tells me to grab a cardboard box from the printer room and throw my things in it. I tell him there's nothing important enough to take, just a stapler, a bobblehead, and a couple of pins. If he wants, he can try to fit them all in his ass at the same time. I really hate this apartment. It's grown beyond a laid-back, complacent disaster and into an active, seething disdain for the carpet, the walls, the ceilings, and everything in between. Now that I'm unemployed, I've got nothing to do but sit here, simmering against every little detail. Like that thing on the bookshelf across from me, that gaudy elephant sculpture. It's tacky as hell, and I despised it from the moment I first saw it in that snooty antique store she dragged me to on what had been a perfectly good Saturday morning. I'd asked her how something so gaudy could be so expensive. She rolled her eyes and told me I had no taste. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't have any taste. Maybe I still don't. But I do have this thwack Little League bat, and I gotta say, that damn sculpture looks much better in 1,000 shards than it ever did in one piece. What else could use some redecorating around here, I wonder? How about that battalion of expensive candles lined up on the mantel? Shit, how many different seasons does this place need to smell like anyway? I wonder if it can get 'em all in one swing. Turns out it can. Espresso machine, bedside lamp, that record player that had replaced my stereo, that full-length mirror that had replaced my dartboard, they all go to oblivion. A gratifying symphony of splinters, shatters, and crashes. 20 swings later, once I've run out of smash-worthy trinkets, I turn my attention to that freaking suede couch. Nothing too satisfying I can do to it with my bat. Should I set it on fire? Nah. I'd probably bring the whole place down. Hell, I'll just move the damn thing. It's a total bitch to get through the front door, but with a little creative geometry, I muscle it out onto the sidewalk. I step back inside, breathing heavily, surveying the new decor of my place. It's a war zone, but at least it belongs to me again, and me alone. Just like that, the loneliness is back with a vengeance. My brother's gone. So is she. Hell, even Cindy from the next cubicle over is a burned bridge now. I've never felt such intense singularity. I'm still relatively young. How long can this go on? I can see my entire future, thwack, stretched out in front of me, like a parched and endless desert, one I'll have to travel alone. I'm not sure if I can make the journey. The barn, the bodies, the lasso man. They're just a nightmare, right? So why am I suddenly feeling pangs of jealousy for that version of me? the one swinging helplessly in the rafters, losing consciousness, fading into a warm black. Because he had the desert behind him. That's why. 2 rings, 3 knocks. Then I swing the door open, and she looks bewildered. She jerks a thumb over her shoulder, wants to know why our couch is leaned up against the parking lot dumpster. Well, 'cause I put it there. She shakes her head, hardening into anger. Then she puts her palms up, seeming to ask for a fresh start. She asks me to listen, tells me she's been doing a lot of thinking, soul-searching, really. I ask her if she's been doing this soul-searching over at Kevin's house. She recoils at the question, looking hurt, but she seems to know it's a fair jab. She starts crying, and for a brief second, I'm almost taken by the swell of pity. All the complications of the last few weeks can't overcome 3 years worth of genuine goodness. Can they? She says she messed up, says she made a mistake, and a huge one at that. And yeah, the whole Kevin thing was unforgivable, but I have to acknowledge that things weren't 100% one-sided, right? We weren't exactly living in a storybook. She says I'd gotten complacent with my life, with our lives. She'd started to feel like she was drowning with me. And after so long, after so many months of drowning, she'd just had a stupid moment of weakness. I can understand that, right? I don't have to forgive it, but at least have to understand it, right? She's missed me. She wants to try and make things work. She can't make it all make sense right now, but can she at least come in, talk about it, so we can, she doesn't know, be together? I stand there in my doorway, trying to absorb the tear-laden speech, using my body to block her from seeing the chaos that my living room has become. God help me, I do want to let her in. I think about the endless, yawning stretch of that desert, the miserable prospects of walking the whole thing alone. The thought of her body pressed against mine is almost too tempting to pass up. And how much is my pride really worth? In light of all that I've been going through, how much am I worth? She looks up at me with vulnerable eyes, then buries her face in my chest, dampening my t-shirt. I hold her. We stand there. It all feels good and warm, familiar, and thwack! Horrible. That's how it feels. I've never felt smaller, more pathetic, less like a man in my entire life. Even while swinging there in the barn, whimpering, spitting, begging the lasso man for mercy, with my eyes bulging out of my skull. I grab her shoulder, press her away as I answer her question before she can ask. No, she can't come in. We can't just be together. Is she kidding? Does she even fathom the damage she did with that selfish, impulsive crap? How it felt to be torn in two at a point in my life when I was already hanging by a thread? No, she can't come in, ever again. In fact, the thought of her showing up on my doorstep, thinking we might still be an option, makes me sick. I turned then, heading back to face the shattered remains of my living room. She calls after me, tears flowing freely now. She tells me in a throaty sob that Kevin threw her out. Where's she supposed to stay? I tell her she can sleep on that suede couch she loves so much, and close the door. Time passes. I barely notice. The big guy is gone. The girl is gone. My brother's gone. But the lasso man is very much here. I can thwack, hear his rope. I can smell his breath. Sometimes I can see the glow of his eyes in the corner of my own. He's not through with me yet. Wants to finish his work. I'm inclined to let him. My bat lays there on the carpet. It's 28 inches of aluminum giving off a friendly gleam in the moonlight. I pick it up careful not to cut myself on any of the shattered glass and porcelain scattered around. I grip it with both hands, thinking back to the days when I could still stand the sight of myself. I want to hit something, smash something, take all my nauseating pain, this paralyzing apathy, and chase it off, if even for just one brief moment. But what's there left to hit? All of her knickknacks and decorations are obliterated. All our mirrors and picture frames are in shards. My work laptop is a devastated mess of splintered wires and circuitry, all evidence of my servitude to the big guy, wiped clean. I'm the only one left. Thwack! It's just me. I need a drink. I step over towards the kitchen where a half-empty bottle of Jack sits invitingly on the counter. I pick it up by the stem, about to twist the top off, when something stops me. Maybe it was just a reflection from outside, just a simple trick from my eyes, but the bottle of amber liquid seems to glow yellow, if only for a brief second. I think back to my first drink when I was 17 years old, flumped on a beat-up basement couch at some house party with my brother. We were celebrating a victory. We'd played in our high school's annual band battle earlier that evening, and handily secured the trophy with a pretty decent rendition of Layla by Derek and the Dominoes. We used to spend full weekends in the garage together, the two of us and our guitars, melting the hours like ice cubes in the sun. Why had we never gotten back to that? What could have possibly eaten all that time in between? Well, this bottle in my hand for starters. Suddenly things make more sense, 'cause it takes two to tango, right? And a village to raise a child, and 3 strikes to make an out, and at least a pair of mice to screw in a light bulb. And now, it's past time I got completely honest with myself, being steamrolled by the big guy, getting ripped apart by the girl, losing my brother, and my absolute best friend. It's all been, well, suffocating. Still, my life belongs to me. Since I hate what it's become, chances are I've had something to do with it. Carry the bottle into my newly spacious living room. I flip it around and catch it by the stem, so I'm holding it like a club. Then I toss it in the air, take a quick loading step and swing. The aluminum barrel catches the bottle dead center in its boxy body. Crashing glass, shards clatter against the walls and windows. Fiery liquid showers everywhere. I survey the results, feeling somehow lighter and stronger at the same time. What else can go? What else has been purchasing my days on Earth at bargain price? I spy my monstrous, self-built PC setup, glowing LEDs on the unit, ergonomic keyboard, and a blazing processor fast enough to take me where exactly? All the hours burned, all the money spent, all the life I've lived through that 15-inch monitor. And what do I have to show for it? The sheer immensity of the frittered away time rolls over me, weakening my knees. Suddenly, the glowing LEDs fade from green to sickly yellow. A few swings and some sizzling, splintering plastic later, my knees are strong beneath me again. In fact, I'm feeling better than I have in weeks. I step back into the kitchen and whip open the freezer door, scanning over the frozen goodies that have made me soft around the middle, short on excess breath, sapped of all the energy I had when I was younger. I bat them all like lazily hung curveballs. Frozen fries and burritos scatter across the room. A pint of cake batter ice cream takes a chunk out of the drywall. My cell phone, my beer stock, my mason jar of weed, dingers, every one of them. Ridiculous, wasteful, self-performative nonsense? Probably, but lately, I need all the catharsis I can get. Soon I'm standing in the middle of my living room again, surrounded by the crushed and shattered remains of my former life. It's leveled, swept away. What's going to take its place, though? Anything I want. My new life belongs to me. But of course, I need to put first things first. Had I grown 6 inches? Or is this just how freedom feels? I smack the barrel of my bat against my palm and take one last look around. Then, I step out the front door. My car coughs itself to death unknown hours later. Since then, I've been ticking off the highway miles on foot. But this gentle asphalt hill I'm climbing is the final one. I can feel it in the soles of my feet, the crackling at the tips of my fingers. A yellow fingernail of burning sunlight is peeking over the horizon line as I reach the top of the slope. And there it is, 300 yards off the road. It sits like a decomposing specter, as it always had. A pointed tower extended off the roof, sagging drunkenly to one side, curling slightly back on itself like a giant, spindly index finger, coaxing me to stroll across the swaying glass, like it had something to show me. I accept that offer. 10 minutes later, the grass turns to barnyard dirt under my feet, and the building looms before me. I see it clearly, every knot in the wood, every rusty protruding nail. There isn't an ounce of fuzzy dreaminess to cloud my brain. I'm fully, completely here. I take a tight grip on the handle of the sliding door, fully expecting the same rusty resistance as before. But it coasts open easily, only offering a minor squeaky complaint. I step inside. Scattered hay crunches under my feet, stinking like ancient horse piss. Bright morning sunlight sharply through the gaps between the rotten boards. Dust flecks dance through the rays. It's a spacious, musty room I stand in, and save for the occasional wooden groans, it's completely silent. So I stand here, bat in hand, waiting, alone. But how alone, really? Less so now. The atmosphere of the barn changes. Suddenly the shadows are doing a different dance than before. The creaks and groans are a bit less passive, a bit more aggressive. The massive room around me is suddenly not so spacious. Then there's a loud creak from above. I don't look. I've seen his gruesome, swinging chorus too many times before. They began their chant. He's the lanky, leering lasso man, got a twirling rope and a steady hand. For a moment, I try not to listen, fixating on the comforting weight of the bat in my right hand. But as their raspy taunts cut deeper into my head, a sudden jolt of righteous indignation lights up my chest. His rope's his brush, the barn's his easel. He's pegged you, boy, for a shut the hell up. And immediately they do. Maybe that shouldn't surprise me. They are dead, after all. Forgotten, fading, turning to dust. As for me, I'm alive. Maybe more so than I ever had been. Their creaking slows to a near stop. I stand. I wait. Finally, he comes. He saunters slowly out from the same horse stall as before, gliding slowly across the wall, this time without the theatrical aid of his chorus. My knees are still. He reaches his spot in the center of the closed wooden door. This time I'm not surprised by his ephemeral transformation. Now he's here, in his full, sooty three-dimensional form, same toothy cockroach sneer below the same droopy mustache, same leather patch over his left eye, same crackling yellow glow from the right. His clothes remain colorless, the snake-like lasso hanging over his shoulder in the same casual way. It's funny, though, for all the little ways he appears so identical to the lasso man of my nightmares. There's one noticeable difference. This one is a lot shorter. We stare each other down as the choir swings wordlessly above us. I shift my bat to my left hand, then back to my right. He brings his lasso around from his shoulder, lets the knot loop drop to the ground with a thump. Stupid to come here, you jelly-spined weasel. You should have left me alone. His taunting smile disappears. His lips tighten over his cockroach teeth. He begins to swing the rope, slowly at first, back and forth. After a few swings, he gives his wrist a hard crack, sending the loop around in a complete arc over his head, then back down again. At the bottom, it slaps the ground. Thwack! like a sound I know well. He sneers again, and his voice buzzes with new vitriol. I'd get steppin' if I was you. Ain't too late to run. Yeah, I nod, feeling a sudden, improbable sneer of my own. It is. Now something amazing happens. That glowing yellow eye in his leering left eye, the glare that has struck in my mind like a splinter since I first saw it, flickers, goes dim, and I can see the dark, impotent blackness behind it. He brings his lasso, thwack, around again, angrily this time. My sneer grows bigger, and in a force of lingering 12-year-old habit, I tap the aluminum barrel of my bat against the inside of my shoe. This bastard was pretty good with that rope when I was running scared. Let's see how good he is when I'm coming right at him. You'll swing, boy. You're a weasel, and you'll swing like the rest of 'em. Yeah, guess we'll see about that, you gangly son of a bitch. I lifted my bat to my waist and gripped it in both hands. Now, I take a long step forward. Guess we'll see.
Some monsters just make better legends, and then some legends just never quite make it to that pinnacle of monsterhood. Coming up next, we have a story about a monster who lives in a very strange place, a place where children often play, a place they may not know is his home. So, let's hear a story about the Chalk Man. Summertime in the cul-de-sac was the time of year we all looked forward to. 3 months of no school, days spent running the sidewalks and riding bikes, and the familiar sound of the ice cream truck a couple of times a week. We were all just middle-class kids, and those without older siblings were under orders to stay with a group if they went out. We lived in those halcyon days when you didn't come in until the streetlights came on, and Mom was only worried when something came out in the paper about stranger danger or an abduction. The street I lived on had about 12 families, and all of them had kids. Me and Mikey Castro were best buds, and had been since first grade. There were usually enough kids on the road, riding bikes or shooting hoops, to get a game of stickball or soccer going if you wanted. Sometimes, if their parents were cool with it, we'd play touch football in someone's yard, or I'd drag my radio flyer wagon out of the garage and we'd load it with plastic guns and play war. Most of the kids came in pairs to play the game of the day, pairs or triples or even quads, but everyone on the block had someone or several someones. Solo kids stood out like a sore thumb, and we all usually chummed together. I tell you all this so I can tell you that Robbie was odd by the standards of the neighborhood. Robbie didn't have a best friend, and I'm not entirely sure that he had friends of any sort at all. He was a skinny kid, rail thin, my mom would have said, with big, thick glasses and a mouth made for frowning. He never joined in on our games, and we never really offered. We weren't unfriendly kids, far from it, but Robbie didn't feel right. I know how that sounds, but a weird kind of haze seemed to hang over Robbie. It always reminded me of the stink lines around Pigpen in the Peanuts cartoons, but this one felt more like TV static. It was like a low background sound that hung around him, and if I spent too much time around him, I always felt like I had a headache coming on. He used to draw on the sidewalk with colored chalk, and we all joked that his dad must bring back the defective sticks from the chalk factory where he worked. No matter the temperature, no matter what the season, Robbie was out there drawing on the sidewalk. It was the summer of '92, and Mickey had a new super soaker. He wanted to do a water war, so all of us with guns showed up to play.
I had a couple of water pistols from Easter, and Stevie Westers had 3 of those big super soakers that were popular the year before. He and his 2 brothers took them, and some of the other kids had ragged collections of water pistols and water balloons. There were about 11 of us in all, and we divided into teams as fairly as we could. The opposing side had more guys, but one of them was Davy Michaels, and his club foot kind of held him back from running. We were soaking each other in lukewarm water when I heard someone yell in frustration. I looked up to see Robbie shaking his wet arm, scowling at 2 of the Westers brothers who had soaked him with their guns. "What are you doing? You'll erase him! Get away from here! This is my sidewalk! Mom said so!" Some of us stopped squirting each other, moving closer as he brandished his piece of chalk like a dagger at the Westers brothers. They were backing away too, like whatever he had might be catching, and he went back down to fix the chalk drawing that they had ruined with their water guns. I approached Robbie, meaning to apologize, but he stood up and brandished his chalk at me again. "Go away! This is my sidewalk! Go play on your sidewalk!" I laughed. "Robbie, the sidewalks are for everyone. You can't own a sidewalk." "Can too," he belted. "Can too. My mom says so. This sidewalk's in front of our house, and it's mine." I took a step forward, trying to calm him down, but then I saw what he'd been drawing and recoiled a little. For a chalk drawing, it was very expressive. I would later think of cave paintings or early primitive drawings, but this was far more savage. It was a tall man, with long frilled arms and long spindly legs. His chest was equally long, stretching in many colors as it tapered up to a rounded head with a pair of stubby horns on it. The eyes were spirals, the swirls changing colors as well as they swirled into the irises. Even wet, it looked very formidable. "What is that?" I asked Robbie, and he must have heard something in my voice. He grinned. "That's the chalk man. I draw him all the time. He comes to me at night and tells me that if I don't, he'll get me. So I draw him everywhere, on the sidewalk, on the carport, even on the back patio." I shook my head, turning to go, but I heard him say something else, and it made my blood run cold. "I put him out here because he likes to watch you guys." "What?" I half whispered as I turned around. "What did you say?" "I said he likes to watch you kids while you play. Someday, when none of you are paying attention, he'll grab one of you and drag you into his little world and gobble you up. That's what he says, anyway." He shrieked again when I started spraying the chalk drawing. I couldn't have told you why I did it, but I felt certain that it needed to be done. This thing needed to be gone forever. And as it started to fade, I heard my squirt gun hiss as it went empty. I moved away slowly, Robbie still crying as he yelled at me for ruining it. And when Mikey came over to see what was going on, I found I couldn't look away from the spot where Robbie was fixing that horrid creature. "What was that about?" Mikey asked, Robbie still shooting me murderous looks. I tried to find the words for it, but I was unable. "I don't know. He said something I didn't like. It made me feel..." I chewed my lip, trying to find something to describe it, and coming up short again. "Bad. Really bad." The water war was starting to wind down now, most of us on our 3rd or 4th tank, and we were all soaked and shivering. "Come on," Mikey said. "I just got a new Super Nintendo game. We can dry off, and you can borrow some of my clothes." I nodded and allowed myself to be pulled away, but it was hard to look away from that hunched figure as he worked over the chalk drawing of his monster. We spent the afternoon playing a new spaceship game that he had gotten. I can't remember the name, but it was fun, and I was shocked when I looked out and saw that it was getting dark. The streetlights would be coming on now, and my mom would be angry if it got dark and I wasn't home. Mickey asked if I wanted to ask his mom to drive me, but his house was only a block down from mine. If I run, I can make it, I told him, and headed off towards home. The afternoon had gotten away from me, the sun riding low, and the night was fast approaching. I'd have to run if I intended to make it in time, but as I ran down the path towards the sidewalk, I stopped as I saw something that I had hoped to avoid. Stretched across the sidewalk, the multicolored chalk very bright, was the Chalk Man. He was even bigger than he'd been earlier, his arms seeming to twine around the fence posts, and I hopscotched over and around him as I took off for home. I was going to be late if I didn't all but fly down the pavement. I hadn't gone very far, though, when I saw another Chalk Man, just as large as the last. His mouth was open, revealing teeth as sharp as knives. A mouth that size would have no problem gobbling me up whole. I ran around this one too, but it wasn't the last. They seemed to be everywhere, and Robbie had been busy indeed. The Chalk Man was rising and writhing across the concrete. His mouth opened and closed as I ran, those gnashing teeth going up and down as my fervent strides bore me on. It was filled with the terror of bedroom closets and growls beneath beds. These chalk drawings made me feel the way that strangers sometimes did, the way I felt when I listened to a scary story, the way I felt when I was outside at night. When I tripped, my cry had nothing to do with the way the pavement ate up my hands and knees. I thought I must have caught the edge of the sidewalk in my haste, but as I looked back, I felt my neck hair stand up. A single chalk hand, the purple claw looking huge and cruel, had risen up to grab my ankle as I ran. The Chalk Man was even now rising from the pavement, its gnashing teeth chomping at my ankle. It nearly had me, too. I was so surprised to find a chalk arm rising from the concrete. This was no cartoon. Things like this didn't happen in the real world. It had dragged me halfway to that gaping maw before I realized I wasn't dreaming after bashing my head on the sidewalk. I pulled and pulled hard, but his hands were strong. He dragged me back, more of him rising as he yanked at me, but it seemed fate had other ideas. He had grabbed not the whole ankle, but my sock, and as his hand slipped on the fabric, I was up and moving before it could latch back around it. I was running, dodging around other chalk drawings, and when I saw my house coming into view, I breathed a little easier. That was until I saw the Chalk Man outside my own gate. He was already rising like a blighted weed from the pavement, and I knew I couldn't get around him. I sidestepped into the neighbor's yard, and that was when I saw it. His hose was coiled around the spigot, and I reached for the nozzle as the shadow of that thing fell over me. It was rising, huge now, coming up, and as I unwound the hose, I watched as the water hit it, the Chalk Man seeming as surprised as I was. I stepped back, some of its color fading, and as I pelted it with water, the chalk began to run into the gutter. He was melting like the Wicked Witch, and as he fell away to nothing, I turned off the hose and ran for home. I came in panting, and any anger my mother might have had at me being late was washed away like the Chalk Man. I told her that I felt like someone had been trying to snatch me, and she made the usual sounds about people being watchful. She fed me, and she told me to get ready for bed, but I knew there wouldn't be any sleep for me tonight. How could I sleep with the image of that chalk demon running through my head? For the next several nights, I had bad dreams about the Chalk Man. In my dreams, I didn't get away. In my dreams, the Chalk Man dragged me across the pavement, and the last thing I saw before I woke up was him pulling me into his mouth. After that night, I didn't see any more of the sidewalk drawings. Some people in the neighborhood had complained, and Robbie was only allowed to draw them in front of his own house. His parents got fined, I heard, and his dad grounded him from drawing for a week. I assume he still did, since the Chalk Man never got him, but the chalk man never darkened our sidewalks again. I can remember, on the days when I found myself close to the madly scribbling boy, that the chalk man still seemed to move, but it could have just been the heat shimmer. These are but the rememberings of a child, but they're so vivid that I often wonder how much is speculation and how much truly happened.
One last story for you, and I promise it's a pretty good one. Brought to us by S.G. Woodhouse. It's a story about another legendary ghost who might be a little realer than they expected. So, I'd like to ask, have you heard of Millie, the Hanged Woman?
You ever heard of Millie, the Hanged Lady? That's what Josh, my best friend, asked me one night while we were camping in the woods. Seriously, is this another story you made up, Josh? Asked Sue skeptically. No, this is 100% true, seriously. You guys never heard of this? I shrugged my shoulders in denial. Josh loved telling stories, especially the urban legends he'd read on the internet. Most likely he'd prepared a dozen of them in advance for tonight. The story begins one night in the forest. Forest where we just happened to be, Josh began seriously. I smiled out of the corner of my mouth and exchanged a glance with Sue, who knew as well as I did, now that he was off and running, there was no stopping him. You see, Millie was a high schooler like the three of us, and ever since she was a little girl, she'd been picked on by the other kids. Millie was different from the others. She always kept to herself, didn't dare speak up, didn't mix well with the others, and soon she became the target of others' abuse. Over the years, her reputation followed her, and the harassment from the other kids in her class became increasingly cruel. Sue kept her neutral expression, but I could feel that the story touched her. She, too, had struggled to fit in after her parents had moved her here, and it was only after befriending Josh and me that she'd managed to come out of her shell. But if she hadn't, she might have been subjected to the kind of behavior on display here, too. In fact, she had confessed to me that this had even been the case at her previous school. One wintry evening, several students decided to play a prank on Millie, Josh continued, the flames from the campfire reflecting his eyes. They all grabbed scary masks and armed themselves with knives and chased Millie as she made her way home through the forest. Millie was terrified, and she fled as far as she could. She got lost in the forest. The story goes that during the night, cold, lost, and hungry, she found a rope stretched over a branch, like an invitation. And that was where she ended her life. What a horror, Sue said, still captivated by the tale. Since then, they say she haunts these woods, and that it's possible to summon her by repeating certain words. Cut the crap, I said uncomfortably. I swear it's true. All you have to do is stand in front of a branch and say, Millie, Millie, why are you so alone? 3 times. Then turn around and say, Millie, Millie, come talk to me. Just once. Then you'll hear the sound of a rope swinging under the weight of her body. And the story goes, if you're unfortunate enough to turn around and look at her, she'll kill you. Okay, that's definitely nonsense. No, really, Josh. You had me going at first, but I don't believe it anymore, Sue said, standing up. You'll excuse me, boys, but I'm going to hit the sack. Good night, and don't stay up too late tomorrow. We're leaving early. With that, she headed off to her tent. Josh and I stayed up a while, staring at the fire in silence, but as if he couldn't hold back any longer, he finally asked, Do you want to do it? Do what? I asked him. Well, repeat the sentence and everything. Come on, we've been walking around picking mushrooms all day. What the hell? I had a feeling that if I didn't agree, he'd ask me every night until I gave in. So, I preferred to take the lead. We found ourselves in front of a branch a few dozen feet from the camp, where the fire was beginning to fade. We had equipped ourselves with our flashlights to see where we were going. Josh seemed pretty excited. Have to admit that once we got to the branch, I was more apprehensive than I would have imagined about some stupid urban legend. "You're the one doing it," Josh told me. "Why me? It was your idea. It was your story. But I've already done it 15 times. Come on, it's your turn, man. Don't back down now." I huffed. This was pretty typical of Josh. I stood in front of the branch, flashlight in hand. Josh gave me the sentence to repeat 3 times, and with a stutter or two, I managed to get it right. I turned around, my back to the branch. Josh stood next to me because he said if he looked, it wouldn't work. "Millie, come talk to me," I finally said in a whisper. "Hey, don't shit yourself," Josh laughed. We waited for a few moments. "Well, I don't hear any taunt rope noises. I guess that means I get to live." "Maybe she was busy elsewhere tonight," Josh replied with a laugh. "Come on, let's go to bed. It's starting to freeze out here." We headed back to the camp. I couldn't help but look back for a moment while holding my lamp in front of me. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something moving from right to left near the tree where we'd been for a few moments. Damn. I really got to stop listening to Josh's stories. I was awakened sometime later by a scream. I scrambled to my feet, ears pricked and wondering if I'd imagined it. I could see through the canvas of my tent that it was still dark outside. "Josh, Sue?" I called aloud, our tents being right next to each other. No answer. Why the hell aren't they answering? If they're playing a prank on me, I'm going to kill them. I grabbed the flashlight from my tent, my cell phone, and quietly stepped out. "Josh, Sue?" I asked again. I lit up their tent in turns and noticed they were both open and empty. I couldn't remember clearly what I'd heard, but I thought the scream was from a girl. I couldn't believe for a second that Sue would participate in a prank like this, but if it wasn't that, then maybe something serious had happened. As I stood there trying to think about where they might have gone and what they might be doing, a strong wind blew. To my right, a few dozen feet away, I spotted something moving. "Josh, I swear to God, if this is one of your stupid jokes," I said, as I slowly approached, my flashlight trying to shine through the vegetation around me. I walked towards where I thought I'd seen the movement, and finally I saw something just to my right moving again. Slowly, heavily, I heard the sound of a taut rope. I shone my flashlight from bottom to top, and there I saw Josh, hanging by his neck with a rope tied to a branch over a tree. I was silent for a few seconds at the shock. "Josh, please, stop this." His face was contorted in an expression of sheer terror. Eyes revolted back. His skin was blue, lifeless. I nudged him with my hand, and he just rocked back and forth a little. I couldn't believe it. It must have been an elaborate prank on his part. It wasn't possible. Not Josh. He was glowing with life. He would never take his own life like that, in the middle of the night, on a camping trip. The reality finally dawned on me, and I was overcome by a violent sob. My legs buckled, and I threw up on the ground. As I wiped my mouth, my eyes misty with tears, I heard something impossible. The sound of a taut rope slowly swinging right behind me. I straightened up, the sensation of mortal danger just behind my neck. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice trembling and still tight. The rope suddenly stopped moving. "Why don't you look at me?" said a feminine voice from beyond the grave, whose windpipe seemed to be strangled. What? Your friend looked at me. Look at him now. He's so much happier here with me." I remained silent, my eyes fixed in front of me, as if frozen in place. It's impossible. She She can't be real. You're having a nightmare. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Look at me. I ran. I didn't know where, and I didn't care. She'd killed Josh, and now this thing, whatever it was after me. After a minute, I remembered Sue's scream. She must have been awakened like me, maybe by Josh getting up, or when he'd been killed. She must have discovered the corpse, too. With any luck, she'd managed to escape. I figured if she'd gone off with her cell phone, she'd have tried to escape to the nearest road, which was about 15 miles, even though there was no way she could get there before the night was over. I tried calling the police and my parents without success, but luckily the GPS still seemed to work, so I followed the direction. I was walking fast, so as not to collapse on the ground from exhaustion. I was already out of breath, and I couldn't stop. I always made sure to aim my flashlight at the ground in front of me to be on the safe side. The urban legend Josh had told me had said that you had to turn around and look at her for her to kill you. So maybe I shouldn't look her in the eye. I felt like I was being stalked. I flinched at every movement of a branch in the wind, and I constantly felt eyes on the back of my neck. But I was too scared to turn around. I had to get the hell out of the forest. Sorry, Josh. I promise I'll come back for you as soon as I find some help. I spotted an abandoned cabin we'd seen on the way here. I remembered that Sue had said that this was where we would find shelter if there was a storm or something. Suddenly I saw a light pierce the darkness through the wooden planks of the cabin. I sprinted towards it. Sue! Sue, I'm coming! I shouted out of breath. I stepped inside, the boards creaking beneath my feet. The light streamed in from under the door, and the cabin only had the one bedroom. I crossed the space between me and the door, glad I'd found Sue before I fled this place. I put my hand on the door handle. Sue? I paused. Silence was unnatural. Something was wrong. Sue, are you okay? I asked through the door, my hand still on the handle. Answer me, please. You're freaking me out. Josh is dead, and the thing that killed him is still around. We need to get the hell out of here. No response. Sue! I noticed the light moving under the door, as if someone was holding the strap at the end of their finger and swinging right to left. No, I said in horror. In response, a childish laugh rang out from behind the door. I ran to the front door, which opened with a shove on my shoulder, and ran straight out of there. After a minute, I collapsed on the ground. It forced me to stop and think about what had happened. Maybe it wasn't Sue. Maybe this thing had managed to grab a flashlight and was just playing games with me. After all, I had no idea the extent of its abilities. I kept my eyes on my knees as I pondered what I'd seen. Then I heard it. The sound which I could now detect amongst any other sound. The sound of a rope stretching taut, swinging from left to right. Sound wasn't coming from behind me this time. It was from my left. I could feel her sinister gaze, inviting me to look at her and sealing my death in the process. I stood up, eyes on my feet, and started to run to my right, but I was stopped in my tracks. The sound of the rope was now coming from just ahead. Without thinking, I turned in the opposite direction. Again, sound was coming from right in front of me. She's everywhere. I'm screwed. I stood there with my eyes on my feet, trying to think of a solution. Josh was dead. Sue was missing, maybe dead too, and this running around all night. I closed my eyes, and tears quickly formed at the ends. I had an idea. Legend said that it was looking at her that allowed her to kill you. What if I just kept moving forward, looking at my feet, or even closed my eyes? The idea of walking through the forest with my eyes closed sent a chill down my spine. But what other choice did I have? I've been squatting here for several minutes now, writing this message. I've tried to call the police, but every time I call, all I get is static. I don't know where Sue is or how to get rid of this thing. I'm alone, I'm cold, and I'm exhausted. If you're reading this, please help me. Please help me.
And just like that, our stories are over for another day. But don't worry, we'll be back again very soon with more cozy horror. Until then, this is Dr. Plague, wishing you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.